Hello and welcome to Breath and Voice Chronicles with myself, Sophia Maya, and my good friend Igor Siberia. You may have seen an episode in my series, Postcards from a Soul and Her Human, where I interviewed this gentleman. It was about an hour long, and we had such an engaging conversation. And he's such an enigmatic, interesting person that I was so excited to interview. Once we finished the interview, we stopped recording and we talked for another 40 minutes or so. We had so many parallels in our lives that we just decided, hey, wouldn't it be interesting to just record a conversation between us and not focus too much on who we are and what we're doing, but really just kind of allow an organic environment to talk about our lives and our experiences and maybe even the things in our lives that are similar. As you can see, we're kind of two different people. We're maybe an odd pairing, but this is such a unique connection. We both wanted to explore it further. So I'd like to introduce again my friend Igor Siberia. Welcome, Igor. It's so nice to see you again.
Good to see you as well, and I'm looking forward to have these deep conversations. Um, and I also know that as humans, we live very similar, or we have a different circumstances, but we are experiencing emotionally very similar or living emotionally similar life because we all go through these phases of different and full spectrum of emotions. However, we experiencing different circumstances, and through these conversations, what I believe that it will help our audience who are going to be watching this to connect on the different topics through our life stories as how they will be resonant to uh, other people's stories.
I absolutely agree with that. There's so much texture in our lives that we don't understand how we connect in ways that we maybe aren't aware of. You and I don't on the outside have very much in common. You are a young man, I'm an older woman. You are a specialist in what you do, and I am really just kind of talking about my life and from a high level. But I felt so connected to you that I wanted to take this journey with you. And the fact that you were interested and willing, it just told me at an energetic level that this is going to be meaningful. And I always believe that things happen for a reason. We don't cross paths accidentally. There's really nothing in our lives that's accidental. It all is part of a puzzle, which becomes hopefully in our lifetimes we become aware of, and we're able to see the image or the tapestry of who we are through those pieces, and the people that we meet, the discussions we have, and the interactions are just all a part of that. So I would like to talk a little bit about how we met. For anyone who didn't see our first episode, which is also available in this series, it's my interview with Igor. But I was serendipitously, synchronistically guided to go to one of Igor's breath workshops, and it was the most amazing experience that I've ever had. And I was so taken by it that I was inspired to contact him afterwards and to send him a clip of an episode that I did about my experience. And from there we connected and we had this amazing interview. And I guess maybe I would want to ask you, Igor, how did that feel on your end? Was there resonance for you? Did you feel this connection? Was it something that you just wanted to explore? Is there anything that was there for you that you might add to that?
Yeah, I remember listening that episode, and I always love to hear other people experiences, but the not everybody get a chance to do that. People not always like get back to me, so it's not like so many opportunities outside of the actual life experience when I get a chance to hear, unless people come over and share that. So, and you one of those few who share the actual episode, like fully revealing and openly talking about what you went through. And I really enjoyed listening, and also were very touched by the transformation, by your story. But what you went through, how you've been isolated for 3 years, and then you felt that you want to join this workshop, and then what you went through, remembering you in his face too, and I'm glad. And then that's why I reach out to tell you that it sounds amazing, and I also felt like, oh, I got inspiration to inspire you, and so we can create more of that to share with our audience, with people, because we have a lot of unique stories to share that I feel be very resonant for a lot of people.
I completely agree. I think there's so much similarity here, and I think people don't often get an opportunity to connect in a way that is unconventional because we're so focused on our lives and just moving through our days and in the common or familiar interactions that we have with other people. And how in my life I'm in a completely different energy 3.5 years later after this isolation period that I am now emerging out of. Even and you are really the first person outside of that little tiny bubble that I have interacted with. I felt and still feel in your presence, and I'll say your energy because that's really what it is about. I feel this completely different than I ever have. And it's not a good or bad thing, it's just a different feeling. And
Hmm.
this, I talk about frequency a lot. I talk about energy and alignment of energy and unaligned energy or misaligned energy, and how in my life I had to leave behind every relationship I've ever had in order to keep rising in my frequency. And
Hmm.
this is a language I did not speak before. And I think one of the things that captivated you for me was when I was in your workshop and I was talking about this, and you're just like, oh, that's no big deal. You're like you've heard this all before. For me, though, I was in an environment that I'd never been around anyone who didn't look at me like I had four noses when I was talking about the experience of ascension, where I was talking about my energy actually transforming from the woman that I was before for 58 years of my life to this person now who has just, I'm having a completely different experience. I almost feel like a baby in the world again, like everything is
Hmm.
brand new.
Hmm.
And for me, you were kind of the first step into that new energetic world. And I think that's one of the reasons why I appreciate this connection so much. I feel like you're almost like my guide into it. Like I have somebody with a very calming and centered energy who is complementing mine in a way I've never experienced before.
And I could understand what you went through, or we meeting you where you at, because I went through that years ago very similarly. I, I as I've been connecting more spiritually to my essence, I went through the phase of people not understanding the new teachings, language that I started using, and I felt kind of like shut down in some ways. And I went through the period where I isolate myself from my regular environment of people, when I just removed myself from there and I went straight to the jungle. And so I have my emergence process, like just what you're going through. So, and because I went through it, I know where you're at in the language and all the adjustments that needed to be made it in order for people to understand like that language, and but yeah, I speak many languages, so I can understand that language as well.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm curious about something you said. Can you just expand a little bit about going off to the jungle? What was that? What was that like?
Uh,
Or was that a metaphor?
yeah, no, it's an interesting story when I felt intuitively that something is going to happen, and I was living I just moved to a big city, Los Angeles at the time, and I was starting my holistic wellness career, and I felt that there's something is going to happen, and the feeling that I had that not I never experienced anything like that before. It was very strange, bizarre. Like what is almost like something knocking over there and keep telling me terrible things about what's going to happen. Like and I'm like, I just moved here. What is that supposed to mean? And I'm like, it's just kind of like a feeling, right? So it was very confusing at the time. But I'm glad that I did not ignore that and start kind of exploring. It's like, well, what if? And I was just became more curious instead of like shutting that down.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, what if I go to Hawaii? And I instantly thought that it's manageable and I can do that. And I orchestrated that kind of situation. I went to Hawaii for, I said, for months.
Wow.
And that was right before the pandemic.
Mm.
So when I arrived to Hawaii and the news started emerging, then it became more clear for me why and what it was guiding me to be in a better place during the pandemic time. That's how I ended up being in Hawaii, where it's supposed to be that just for a few months. Eventually, I chose to like permanently move there, and I continue residing there now.
Wow, that is really similar. It is to what I went through too. Uh, I was compelled to leave my business. I had my own business. I was for 12 years with my ex-husband, and one day I was working and I just said out loud, "What am I doing here?" And I knew it was time for me to go. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was 58 years old. I was going through a divorce, I'm sorry, I was divorced. And I had built this business with my ex-husband, and I remember the night I decided to leave. I threw a tantrum. I was upset that why do I have to leave? I built this business. It's 90% of my blood, sweat, and tears. That's not really true. Physically, it was his. I was the back end of it. But I was so upset at the thought that I would have to uproot my business after I already lost my marriage and all these things changed in my life. I was fighting it. But by the next morning, I just knew that I had to do it. It was something and like you said, if I would have ignored it and swallowed that feeling and just gone back to work and ignored it, that's when we build compression in our bodies. That's when, and I experienced this during the last several years of my marriage when my heart and my intuition was telling me it's time to go. But my ego and my stubbornness and my complacency was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm comfortable here. So my situation was certainly different, but how similar is what happened to both of us is I realized that if I was going to have any opportunity for peace, not joy, happiness, success, abundance, just peace, I had to listen to my gut, which was always screaming at me. And when I took that leap of faith, is basically what it was. I had no idea where I was going to land. And that was the beginning of COVID as well. And I was secluded in my house or sequestered in my house because of COVID. And that was the beginning of my transition into this new energy. And it took about 7 months for me to understand what was happening to me, that I wasn't just healing from a breakup, that I was actually healing from my whole life, that it was like a top down, take everything out, rebuild the engine from scratch. Uh, I didn't realize that till about 7 months in. And when I did understand that that was happening, is when I was able to embrace it and really understand and intentionally be a participant in it instead of being pulled through it. And so many serendipities and the synchronicities happened to guide me to the material that I used. And so, long story short, here I am 3.5 years later since the beginning of that isolation period. I'm just now starting to emerge out into the world. But that time was so critical for me to hear my own inner voice. I think I was so intent on keeping what I had because of the fear of rebuilding, especially at 58 years old. I didn't even know what I would do for money. I mean, I had a savings and a retirement, but it wasn't enough to last me years and years and years. But I knew I would be all right. I just took the leap of faith. And I think what you said is so meaningful about not ignoring that voice and understanding that there's a reason that voice is so loud. And if you ignore it, it's at your own peril. And if you engage with it, you're actually taking your soul's journey, which is easy. It's the natural flow of your life. And it's something that we don't understand until we can quiet ourselves down, shut everything off, close it all down, in my case and yours, and really reevaluate from the inside out who we are. And then we get to emerge as this new version of ourselves, which I'm just having the most fun discovering
I
who I
love that.
am. And
Oh,
for those who might not know, real quickly, if you listen to our first episode, I introduced myself as Gina. I have recently changed my name as part of this incredible transformation. I adopted a name that was meaningful to me. I have a difficult relationship with my given name, which I won't go into, but changing my name honestly had such an uplifting effect on me overall that I'm going through the legal process of changing it. So I wanted to mention that first for a reason, if anybody knows me from my past episodes or even the first episode with Igor and myself, that I am now Sophia Maya, and I'm still getting used to it. So we might see a little bit bumping with that, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And I'm sorry, Igor, if you can remember what you were going to say, I apologize. Go right ahead.
I was going to say that that inner voice, it's a kind of like comes as a whisper, and
Mm-hmm.
at the time it's not always um, clear, or it might be even confusing, and logically especially it's extremely difficult to understand because it's always something like out of what you can even logically think that you can do it. But if we get a chance to not ignore it and just be curious and see what potentially could be done. Like in my case, it's like, why don't I just go there for a month? It's maybe not specifically moving there at the time, but it was just, but at least something in that capacity. And then courage, I very admire much courage that you had to start making those changes. And sometimes it does takes a lot, meaning that it takes to leave everything behind. And I went before I moved to Los Angeles. That's why I moved from San Francisco, because I want to remove myself from that environment that I spent all my 20s and had my past relationship. And so I have to move to a new environment and remove everything that's been uh, kind of like cultivated, connected me there in order to start my process of metamorphosis. So when we go in that cocoon, and we isolate ourselves and we shut everything down. We forget about that previous life and we allow for something new to be born. And to also, it's a time when we get a chance to deeply reconnect to our true essence, to our authenticity, to really understand on a deeper level who we truly are outside of everybody else and what everybody else think, say, and all the other images that being kind of created or we created in order to please somebody else, for example. And so we get in that moment of reconnecting to our own essence. And so that's why that process of isolation is and cultivation of energy and reconnection, relearning, remembering, and then you come back, and then you now know who you are. You remember, and then yeah, and then I like how you said the energy and the frequency, talking in that kind of like what language vocabulary is what actually happening on that energetic level, as we humans are energetic vibrant beings. We with our voice we creating a vibration and frequency, And we can alternate that by being loud or softer, creating different vowels. Um, and so while we going in that metamorphosis space, we kind of like elevate the vibration. And so when that is changes, so then we can resonate on a different level. And when that happens in our life, then we can attract in our life a different frequency, the higher frequency. So when we in there in the problems with everything is difficult, anger, frustration, sadness, confusions, right? And we attract all more of that. If you familiar with when everything happens at the same time, one thing after another, and it's like a chain or snowball. And so once you go, it's kind of like the time when universe calling for you to look at what is not working and go inside. Quite often people do opposite and we go outside, we're trying to distract ourselves. But if we allow that space and we go inside, we finally understand, remember, and transform. And then we coming out and then we radiate that different vibration that actually brings a lot more, even different connections and different things in our life that are more fulfilling, something that we dream of, and then all start coming back naturally.
I'm just realizing as you're speaking, that time when I went into this seclusion or this isolation period during COVID, I discovered something magnificent. I became creative. I was connected to an inspiration or a channel of inspiration that I didn't know was there. And this, what I understood to be later, was the development of my intuitive channel, which connected me to the wisdom of this of source energy, really is what it is. And through that inspiration, I created this body of work called Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. Actually, the podcast started about a year into it because I was talking to my daughter about how do I advertise this. I feel like the written work that which at the time I was just writing articles and I'm writing a book, it really wasn't attracting much attention. And I said, maybe I need a video on my website or something. And she stopped me. She said, Mom, I see you doing a podcast. And I said, what are you talking about? But I knew that I was receiving a message through my daughter that that's what I was meant to do. And I, again, leap of faith, I just bought a microphone, I got a camera, I sat down, had no idea what I was doing. My first episode is called Hi. It's just a few minutes. So it really was, but it was another way for me to express myself, to share this energetic uh, evolution with other people through my voice and my story, which is very unique. And so I wanted to say that that isolation period that you went through as well, did you find your creativeness in that, or was that something you were already doing?
Yeah, that's exactly the moment when my creativity were coming back because never could make it time.
Yeah,
It's always something else that you have to take care of, all the
right.
obligations and responsibilities like everybody else living life. And then the only time we get a chance when we let everything go and then we finally opening those creative channels and allowing ourselves to have that time. That was a time that I got a chance to reconnect, to connect to music. That's the time when I start playing instruments and learning more and going really deep with it. Yeah, I definitely could see how that opens that creativity.
And so, yeah, so this feels like to me, meeting you, having the serendipitous connection with you, this all the synchronicities, which it's hard to unsee synchronicities when you start to notice them. I mean, our whole lives are guided by synchronicities. This is just, it's what I refer to as the magic of the human existence because we are guided all the time. We are always being spoken to. We are always being nudged or urged or in my case, I describe my spiritual awakening as being dragged in by my ear. Like I had to be hit over the head with a frying pan in order to get the message that you don't belong here anymore. You need to be somewhere else entirely. So we're just going to take you out of that situation, which I ended up in the hospital during the, actually, I was already divorced, but the connection with my ex-husband was so powerful. He's been described to me as a karmic soulmate or a high purpose soulmate. And he was agreed to, I guess in another lifetime, to break me. So I would go into this he was the catalyst for me to go into this isolation and have this transformation, really. So I'm very grateful to him to this day. But I ended up in the hospital. I couldn't breathe. And this is an interesting connection to what
Mm.
you're doing, because you're teaching people about breath again. And it's something we do without thought. It runs, we breathe in and out. We have this accordion of lungs in our body and we just breathe, but we don't understand the power of our breath. And this is what I learned through you going to this incredible workshop, which I will never forget the experience, was that when you connect with your breath again and you use your intention, I think that's the part that people really don't get to hear. They hear workshops, they hear people talking at a high level about spirituality or awakening, and those words have really become so commonly used. I think they've lost their power. But when I worked with you for that 2 hours, I was in your presence. I was reminded how powerful my breath was and how, I mean, it's hard to describe how much I learned in just that short period of time. And I find myself now taking deep breaths and just reminding myself that I am a living and breathing entity. And my mind might rush off 40 miles ahead of me, but my body needs me where it is. I have to meet my body where it is. And if I pay attention to that and my breath, my experience with my whole entire life completely changes. So I wanted to really exemplify that too, and thank you for that as well. And
Yeah.
maybe hand that over to you to talk more about that, because this is really the reason why I feel this connection with you so deeply. Was this what I learned?
Yeah, something that I've been guided by my ancestors who came to me in a vision, and they told me that my mission is to remind humanity how to breathe. It's everybody breathing, but there with no awareness. So it's kind of like became automatic, autonomous. But when we bring awareness and breath together, that's what called conscious breathing. That's where the alchemy happens. That's when the portal, when we get a chance to connect to higher consciousness, to everything around us. It's like the time that we can connect to deep parts of ourselves, to our ancestors, and to everybody else. It's a biological technology that we have within us. Quite often, we try to find things like outside where everything that we needed is right there. Quite often, we try to change everything around us when everything that we need to change starts within. And the ones that being shifted, then everything around us being shifted and changed, and what we desire comes from inside. And breath is that powerful tool. I see that as everything. It's kind of like a technology, a weapon, a love. It's like all of it.
Yeah.
But literally, you can't do harm. It's just more of like how powerful that is. And that's something that we all have access to. And that's my favorite part, that I'll be able to share with anybody, any age, at any ethnicity, any background, because breath is something that each human on this planet do from the very first moment that we come into this world until the very last breath we take before we transition.
Well, that's absolutely beautiful, Igor. And I can't thank you enough for sharing. We didn't create this format to talk about our work, but it's going to be such a natural part of it. And that's exciting to me because that's how natural what you are doing is. It's such a natural part of life, but it's so powerful when you when you look at it with intention and you truly integrate that intention into your body, it changes your experience as a human being, and I just really appreciate that. So I want to thank you for the time that you spent with me today. It means everything to me, and we're going to do this again. We're going to make this a series. We're going to see how far it goes. We're going to let it have a natural life of its own, and when it's done, it'll let us know. So we're going to plan on doing more of these for now. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and having this incredible conversation between myself and my friend Igor here. So we hope you tune in again. And we want to end this with what, Igor? We're going to end with a breath.
Yeah, I also want to thank everybody for being with us here today. Thank you for having just this time and opportunity we've been given. And we do want to finish that with the breath. And we invite everybody who is watching us right now, just take few deep inhalations together. Take a deep inhale to your belly. Exhale all the way. Take the second deep inhalation. Expand your belly fully. And exhale. And one more, the deepest inhale of the day. All the way to your belly, fully expanding. Holding it just for a moment at the top. And relaxing, naturally letting the air out. And feeling the shift, the presence that happens just right in this precious 3 breaths, the precious moment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think we might have to end every episode with that. We'll see. But
we will.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you so much. And we will talk again very soon, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.